G'day viewers, it's the weekend. How are you? I'm doing fine, thanks for asking. But making my traditional totally fucked up Friday video. And look, it's Friday for me while I'm making this. It's going to be Friday somewhere in the world when it goes live. You know, I've now got to face after this the whole render the video and upload the video. And I honestly don't know how long that's going to take. So this is totally fucked up Friday because I'm doing it on Friday. And what is fucked up? Well, thinking about Australia, big story this week is the Banking Royal Commission. For those who don't know, a Royal Commission is a very serious legal investigation into a thing. When an issue is regarded as very serious in Australia or England, a Royal Commission can be ordered and then you investigate. See, when it starts, it's not like there's someone being charged. There's not a defendant. It's an issue that's being investigated. Like recently, we had a Royal Commission into sexual abuse in the Catholic Church and other institutions, which our sitting government resisted quite a bit. They were in opposition when it was in. Julia Gillard's Labor government put it in, and the Conservatives were going, this is a witch hunt. Lo and behold, it revealed the truth of an absolutely terrifying level of abuse and cover-ups in a variety of institutions. And so a Royal Commission was a pretty goddamn good idea because it finally vindicated people who are saying like, no, these institutions that were set up to protect people and guide people and be positive for people were actually havens of the worst abuse imaginable. And now we've got banking. See, again, Labor tried for a while to have a Royal Commission into misdeeds in the banking world. And the Conservatives very strongly resisted it. Who knows why? Probably partly for some bloody-minded free market ideology. No, the free market can't possibly be wrong. And also, quite frankly, because a lot of them have incredibly close ties to the banking and finance industry, and they get a lot of campaign finance from them, and, you know, they didn't want to upset them. But they ended up getting backed into a corner by the Country Party, the Nationals, because I grew up in the country, and if you live in a city and think banks are fucking you over, you don't know the fucking half of it. When you grow up in the country and you're living on farms and shit, you basically know banks will go out of their way to fuck you over. So the Nationals actually arced up against their coalition partner and said, no, we're having a Royal Commission into banking. And just in the first week this week, lo and fucking behold. Now, I want you all take a deep breath, brace yourselves, because you might not have been ready for that. If an actual objective investigation is done into financial services and markets, you'll be surprised, because I know you trust the markets implicitly, but you will be surprised to learn that rampant fucking misbehaviour and outright corruption is going on. Who knew? Who knew these bastards were holding us down and fucking us really hard? Not even the common decency to give us a reach around. That's a little tribute to the late Leermy, by the way. So, among the bombshells this week, the CEO of a big investment company called AMP resigned, said, look, I have to take responsibility as CEO. Apparently, everyone in my company is a bunch of cunts. He was going to step down at the end of the year anyway, so it's a bit of fucking show more than anything. But, and the banks are obviously in it as well. You know, what sort of misadventures have been told? Well, basically, financial advisors are giving surprising bad advice. What they're doing is advising people to undertake actions that generate commissions for the advisors. See, and even if it's a kind of sort of good idea, you lose money in every transaction from the commission. Now, here's the fun bit. If it's a good idea and you make money, the advisor makes a commission. Here's the kicker. If it's a bad idea and you lose everything and go broke, they still get their commission. They don't fucking care. So their big thing is to keep you doing stuff, not to get your money into a safe and secure investment, but to keep you moving the money around. They were advising people like, you know what you should do? You should sell the family home and use that money for the... And people were fucking losing everything. And the advisors knew they were giving their bad advice. But not only was there no punishment for them giving bad advice, they were rewarded for giving bad advice. There's even cases like, oh look, this guy, he's really bad. He's giving people bad... I think he's actually a criminal. We should actually take his job away from him. Except there are cases where people who were basically proven to be corrupt and at best negligent, at worst criminal in their behaviour, were still able to act as advisors and earn money. It's like, surprise, surprise, the banks and finance companies don't give a fuck about us and have been fucking us over for years. So, you know, I'll drink to that. And of course, it's a real sick parade this week with this shit coming out. All the government ministers are going, well, it's just as well we had this Royal Commission. This is shocking news. This is the Royal Commission that they fought tooth and nail to not have. That they spent literally years saying was a bad idea. Would just be a sideshow. Absolutely meaningless. And now it's happening and it's like, oh, look. The industry's corrupt from top to bottom and is fucking people over non-stop. Who knew? Like, apart from everyone. So, this is not even... It's just barely scratched the surface now. Again, it's really funny. The Conservatives were actually trying to go after what's known here as industry super funds. Superannuation, which is... There are versions of this all around the world. But it's basically a little bit of your wages. Each pay packet goes to a savings thing that you can get. And it's supposed to finance your retirement. And this is on top of any actual government-provided welfare. And there are various super funds. And there's what's known as industry super funds. These are largely actually run by unions who the Conservatives hate. Just by definition, they hate unions. And they're convinced that they could find corruption in the industry super funds. Despite the fact, on paper, industry super funds are much better for contributors than for-profit super funds run by banks and investment companies. And that's a simple, demonstrable fact. These industry super funds are better for the people in them than the ones run by finance companies and banks. But they're unions, and the Conservatives, who are fundamentally anti-union, are sure they could fuck this up and destroy the industry super funds and give it all to the banks and finance companies. The ones who are now, by the way, being revealed to be evil motherfuckers. So this is what we call a developing story. Pretty big developments in the first week, but there's no way this is ended yet. Where, like, this is the beginning of the beginning, not even the beginning of the end. So you'll probably hear me talking about this more in coming weeks, because there are likely to be some fucking hardcore revelations coming up. So brace yourself, kids. Speaking of things coming up, next week, April 25th, is ANZAC Day. It's a significant day in Australia and New Zealand. ANZAC stands for Australia-New Zealand Army Corps, which was a joint force in World War I. And what people tend to focus on for ANZAC Day was what's known as the Gallipoli campaign, when some super clever people in British High Command, Winston Churchill central among them, said, hey, you know what we should do? Turkey's aligned to Germany. We should get forces into the Dardanelles. We control those shipping lanes. Be fucking awesome. Let's go! And it was a fucking disaster. Failed completely. Actually derailed Winston Churchill for quite a while. And also killed thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of young men. Both of Australia, New Zealand and Empire forces. And Turks who, and this is the thing, a lot of people, when they talk about Anzac Day, seriously don't have clue fucking one of what actually happened. And a key thing to remember is this was us, the good guys, invading another country, Turkey, who were defending their homeland, and they end up successfully defending it, and there's all sorts of amazing things with modern Turkey. Now, I've made a lot of videos about Anzac Day over the years because it's a pretty amazing story. It's pretty full on for everyone involved, and I do think there are important issues. But what's happened in the last 10 to 20 years particularly is a really disturbing pseudo-religion forming around Anzac Day. And so much of what particularly conservatives, but not limited to conservatives, want to push is either not really true or completely fabricated. And it's seriously like, of all the people who stand up and go, we've got to honour the diggers. Yes, Anzac Day. Pull them up and say, what do you think Anzac Day is? What do you think it's marking? What do you think that's happened? And a significant majority of the population would be fundamentally wrong in almost everything they said. And it isn't really their fault because people are fed a mythology. They're fed straight up lies about what happened. It was not a glorious adventure. It wasn't the formation of Australia. It was a horrifically failed military adventure that fucking cost thousands and thousands of lives for no good reason. And what's worse, a lot of people also go, oh, Gallipoli happened, and then that was it, happily ever after. No, that was only the start of the war. The troops who survived the Dardanelles campaign, most of them then went on to Europe. And what a fucking shit show that was. We're now like at the 100th anniversary of the end of World War II and World War One. Sorry. They blur into one another. Yeah, we're at the 100th anniversary of the end of World War One, and I feel like nobody has learned any lessons. There is basically nothing good to be said about World War One, and I'm really disturbed by people who try to talk about glory and whatnot when it was just so many predominantly young men dying in fear and horror. Is disgusting and inexcusable. And not just the troops, the families of the troops, the civilians in the war zones, the support services, the medical corps, all these people who went through horror. And we have there's the saying that ties around both Anzac Day and Remembrance Day, November 11th, like, lest we forget. And I think people don't even know what that means. Not least because you see people on social media saying, lest we forget, not L-E-S-T, they do L-E-S-S. No, that's not right, kids. But honestly, for me, that thing, lest we forget, like, as in we must not forget, the one thing I don't want to forget is the fucking politicians who treat it like a fucking chessboard, sending troops into war unnecessarily, sending young men predominantly into horrible slaughter for ridiculous, nebulous goals that are almost never realised. And so the one thing when we think about Anzac Day, World War I, World War II, any military engagement, what I don't want to forget is what a bunch of cunts politicians are. And not least, people, like, there is literally hundreds of millions of dollars being earmarked by the Australian government for war memorials when we actually have living service veterans who can't get proper health care, who can't get housing. I mean, would it not be a better use of money to take care of people who are still alive and the families of service people who aren't still alive? Would that not be a better use of the money to make sure service veterans and their families are cared for? They talk about, oh, the ultimate sacrifice, while ignoring people who have made that sacrifice who are still here. And it just does my head in. And I swear, like I said, it's become a weird sort of pseudo-religion in Australia, and it's gotten really sick. And if Anzac Day is the ghost of horrors past, the way people behave, like I've already seen the first quaking of the ghost of fuckery to come, a TV presenter, Carl Stefanovic, who's honestly normally not that bad, but did this ridiculous brain-dead fucking spray. See, Anzac Day is on Wednesday next week. And among other things that's happening, the Avengers movie Infinity War is opening in a lot of cinemas on the Wednesday. It's a public holiday. And everything, it's weird, everything's closed till noon, and then things open. So afternoon, this will be start playing in the cinemas. And he said it's an affront. It's an affront. You can't cash in on Anzac Day. See, because new movies usually open on a Thursday in Australia. Unless it's a public holiday, like Anzac Day or New Year or Christmas or other major holidays, and they open movies on the major holiday. But Carl got himself worked up about, oh, this is unexcusable. This is terrible. This is awful. What about the kiddies? Need to absorb Anzac Day. It's like, well, you know, if the kids were going to fucking learn something real about Anzac Day, I'd be really happy. But I honestly think the opening of a movie on this day is not relevant at all. Like, and it's straight up embarrassing to watch this fucking idiot flail about, oh, it's an affront, is it? Like, are you so desperate for attention you have to make up brain dead shit like it? And no, don't point the finger at me. Do not point the finger at me making up confrontational shit just for attention. Totally different. I don't know how it's totally different, but I'm sure it is. So, Carl doesn't drink on the show. He has gone on the show after Logie's in a state that I think could be fairly called tired and emotional. But no, doesn't usually actually have a drink on the show. But it's like he's gone in this foaming at the mouth. And like last year we had this bizarre thing where people lost their shit at a young woman, Yasmin, and I won't even try and pronounce her last name, but because she did a Lest We Forget and she mentioned the fucking concentration camps we have for refugees in Australia. Because those people are victims of war. It's like, if you're going to say, lest we forget about a terrible war in the past, you need to not forget. You need to realise there is conflict now. There is victims of conflict now. That's what I said. If you're going to think about Anzac Day, you need to really think about the service people and their families and the civilians and the support services and all the people whose lives are fucking torn apart by conflict like this. And as I said, really, really remember the piece of shit politicians. But because she had the audacity to say, we should think about people who are victims of war now, she was literally hounded out of the country. And as like a journo for SBS one year also said, oh, he went a bit over the top and said some fairly full-on things and lost his job, which was ridiculous. But I've been thinking about it with the ridiculous way stupid people have behaved. And again, I will point out, I believe these people don't even really know what really happened in the Gallipoli campaign. But anyway, people who turn Anzac Day into a religion and it's going, if you dare to stray outside what I consider orthodoxy, I will crucify you. And, you know, because, this young woman said, lest we forget the people in Manus, etc. And she was hounded out of the country. And now we've got Carl Stefanovic saying, the opening of a movie is a front. I have come up with, if you want a lot of attention on Australia Day, if you want to really corner the market on being a social pariah and maybe get chased out of the country, my tip is go see Avengers Infinity War and then post pictures of the characters who die, because we all know at least some of the Avengers are going to die in Infinity War. So you post their picture on Anzac Day, hashtag lest we forget. And I guarantee really fucking stupid people who have no idea what they're talking about will lose their minds at you.